I always hated the claustrophobic silence of pre-dawn mornings before a shift. My alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., a dull, nagging reminder that my life was stuck on repeat. Wake up, push myself into a pair of dusty jeans, swallow black coffee, then head down into the mine. Gray light leaked through the cracks in our flimsy blinds, painting the bedroom walls with a tired gloom. Helen's side of the bed was empty. I frowned, running a calloused hand over the rumpled sheets. She'd been restless these last few weeks, complaining that all her girlfriends had bigger homes, nicer cars, and glossier nails. I tried to give her everything I could. Extra shifts, double overtime, if the foreman would let me. Just last month, I'd worked 18 days straight, hoping to stash away enough money to surprise her with a weekend getaway. But the money never stretched as far as I wanted. And Helen, well, she'd grown sharper-tongued and more distant. I heard a sudden thump from the living room. My pulse skipped. Normally, she'd be asleep at this hour, or wrapped in a bathrobe waiting to see me off. I padded out quietly, the worn floor creaking under my boots. The overhead light was off, but faint illumination slipped through the blinds, just enough to catch a glimpse of movement. A silhouette. A man's silhouette. He was tall, broad-shouldered, standing there like he owned my living room. My living room. Panic clawed at my chest. I wanted to flick the light switch, but a strange fear gripped me. Maybe if I stayed still, this would vanish. But my breath rasped, and he turned. Rick Coleman. I'd seen him once or twice around town, strutting through the local diner in an expensive suit. The man exuded arrogance. And now he was in my house at 4:30 in the morning. My eyes darted to the couch. Helen was there, half-dressed in a hurriedly pulled-on t-shirt. Her hair was a messy halo around her flushed face. The posture of her body screamed guilt. Knees pressed together, arms folded. Rick turned fully, arms sliding into the sleeves of his expensive dress shirt, as though finishing up something. Something I'd have given my life never to see. No one said a word at first. The hush was deafening. Helen's chest rose and fell in quick, jerky motions, and Rick just stared, undeterred. His lips twisted into something that might have been an apology or a smirk. I couldn't tell in the dim light. My stomach twisted. My mind screamed, "This can't be happening." We might have been rocky, but never in my darkest nightmares did I imagine finding her like this. I noticed the throw pillow on the floor, the coffee table shoved slightly aside. Signs of frantic movement, or passion. I swallowed, stepping forward. What the hell is this? The words tasted bitter on my tongue. I wanted to shout, but my voice just came out raw, ragged. Helen shot up from the couch, nearly stumbling over the pillow. Mike, we didn't plan. She clutched at the hem of her t-shirt. Her lower lip trembled, but I saw something in her eyes besides fear. Relief that the secret was out, maybe, or the toxic thrill of having been caught. Rick, the bastard, calmly buttoned the last of his shirt, smoothing down the front. "We should talk like adults," he said in a smooth, condescending tone. "Get out." I snarled, every muscle in my body coiled. I felt a wild surge of anger so fierce I could hardly see straight. My ears buzzed. My breath caught in my lungs. "Get out of my house." He lifted his hands, palms out, in mock surrender. Then he turned to Helen, murmured something that I couldn't catch, and stepped toward the door. My fists itched to slam into his smug face, but a small rational voice in my head reminded me that this was bigger than a punch. It was a betrayal that would shatter my world. When Rick disappeared into the dawning light outside, Helen sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. Her slender shoulders shook with sobs, or maybe it was fear. I didn't move to comfort her. Anger burned too hot inside me. I flipped on the lamp, flooding the living room with harsh yellow. The old wallpaper looked bleak, the furniture cheap and worn, a reflection of everything I'd tried to provide but never quite could. Helen looked up, tears streaking mascara down her cheeks. "Mike, I'm sorry," she whispered, voice cracking. I I let out a hollow laugh. Never meant for me to find out. Or never meant to cheat in the first place. Her eyes fluttered shut. She opened her mouth, shut it again. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry. It just happened." "It doesn't just happen, Helen." My voice shook. "How long?" I demanded. She winced, hugging her knees. "A few weeks, maybe a month." A month. My mind reeled. While I'd been breaking my back in the mines, she'd been sneaking around with that slick big shot. My heart pounded so violently I thought my chest might crack. Helen looked away, staring at the scuffed coffee table. I noticed her bare legs, a faint bruise on her thigh in the shape of a hand. Not mine. My jaw clenched. I wanted to break something. Anything. I stalked into the kitchen, yanked open the fridge just to do something with my hands. The stench of leftover takeout made my stomach churn. I thought about Rick's cologne, how it probably lingered in my living room, how my entire house smelled like betrayal. Helen followed, standing in the doorway, arms wrapped around her body. The old t-shirt she wore did nothing to hide the red marks on her neck. A wave of nausea swept me. This was real. This wasn't a nightmare. "Mike," she started, voice trembling. "Please. I can explain." I slammed the fridge shut so hard the top freezer door rattled. "Explain what?" "That I'm not enough. That you need some rich asshole to buy you pretty things." My words came out sharper than I intended, slicing through the air. Yet in that moment I didn't care. She'd pulled the rug out from under my life. Her face crumpled. "I just wanted security. He offered me, I don't know, excitement, maybe. A chance at a better life." She inhaled a shaky breath, eyes flicking to the floor. "But it's not all about money, Mike. You barely looked at me these past months." I let out a humorless laugh. "Because I was working my ass off trying to give you what you want." She bit her lip, tears threatening again. "I know. I'm sorry. I felt alone. The future looked hopeless. And Rick, he made me feel special." Somehow, that last word cut the deepest. All those hours underground, breathing in coal dust, thinking about how we could plan a family someday, and she just wanted to feel special. The sour taste of betrayal coated my tongue. I forced myself to take a step back, planting my palms on the kitchen counter. I felt sweat bead along my hairline. Outside, the faint glow of sunrise painted the sky. Another day, another shift. But my life had changed forever, and I was stuck, battered by 1,000 questions. "Did you?" I paused, swallowing the bile in my throat. "Did you sleep with him here? In our bed?" "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. We used his hotel room in town most of the time." "Most of the time," I echoed, letting the words hang. I wanted to fling them in her face. "So they did it here too. Maybe that very couch where we watched movies, where we once cuddled under a blanket, pretending the world wasn't such a hard place." I shut my eyes, an onslaught of images crashing over me. Rick's hands all over her, the heat in her eyes, the way she might have whispered his name. It was enough to make me want to tear a hole in the wall. She stepped closer, her voice shaking. "Mike, say something." I snapped my eyes open and glared at her. "What do you want me to say?" "That everything's fine. That we can go back to normal." "Because that's not happening, Helen." Her lips parted, but no words came out. I turned away, pulling my phone from my pocket, mind racing. Part of me wanted to call the police, just to remove Rick forcibly from my life. But I knew that was pointless. This wasn't a crime. This was personal devastation. My knuckles turned white around the phone. It was nearing 5 a.m. If I didn't leave soon, I'd be late to the mine. But how could I walk into that suffocating tunnel, pretending normalcy after discovering this? Helen's breath hitched. "Please, just let me explain more. Let me make it right. Rick, he's not." "Stop," I said, my voice raw. "I don't want to hear his name." I stepped around her, the smell of her perfume mixing with stale sweat, And something else, his cologne. The reminder roiled in my gut. I need to go. If I stay, I'll say or do something I regret. Her eyes shone with tears. You can't just walk away from this. I spun around, face contorted in rage. Walk away? You think I'm walking away? No, Helen. I'm going to work, because that's all I know how to do. But this, us, I gestured at the two of us, the small kitchen, the yawning chasm of betrayal between us. This may be over. She choked on a sob, pressing her hands to her mouth. I grabbed my lunch pail, yanked open the front door, and stepped into the cool morning air. The streetlight at the end of our block flickered. It felt surreal. Everything looked the same as every other morning, but my world was completely rearranged. I swallowed the urge to scream, to punch the truck door. Instead, I climbed into my pickup and drove off. My heart pounded so hard it almost drowned out the rumble of the engine. By the time I pulled into the dirt lot by the mine entrance, the fiery swirl in my chest had turned into a throbbing ache. Men filed toward the elevator shaft, faces lined with worry or exhaustion. Another day in the pit. Another day risking our lives for a paycheck that could never measure up to a man like Rick Coleman. The elevator ride down felt like sinking into my own personal hell. The clang of metal doors shutting, the hiss of air as we descended. Every second hammered home a single truth. I had become a joke, a naive husband. My coworkers cracked jokes about everything, but I had no appetite for laughter. My thoughts played on a loop. Helen's shaky voice, Rick's smug stance, the bruise on her thigh. The shift was an agonizing haze of lifting, drilling, choking on dust. Normally, I lost myself in the routine, but now, all I saw were shadows in the corners of the tunnel, phantoms of my wife and that man. I nearly smashed my hand with a hydraulic press, so distracted I was by visions of them together. At lunch break, I found a quiet corner in the dim corridor. My half-eaten sandwich tasted like cardboard. I pressed my back to the cold stone wall, sliding down until I was sitting on the ground. My phone vibrated. Helen's name on the screen. I stared at the device, the trembling in my hand betraying me. I let it ring. No words could fix what I'd seen at dawn. I must have dozed off because the sudden boom of a far-off explosion jarred me awake. The foreman was calling us back. Another haul, another measure of dust clogging my lungs. By the time my shift ended, I could barely see straight. Climbing into my truck, I realized I couldn't go home. Not yet. My mind was a storm of fury and heartbreak. I drove aimlessly, passing the modest storefronts of our little town, the neon bar signs flickering in the encroaching dusk. Finally, I parked near a small diner. Through the greasy glass window, I saw lonely patrons hunched over coffee cups. I thought of going in, drowning my thoughts in a bitter brew. But I knew that wouldn't fix the black hole in my chest. Before I could decide, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Helen. I'm sorry. Come home, please. I let out a frustrated sigh. Home. Did that word even mean anything now? The nerve of her, to ask me to come back to the scene of the crime. Yet I had nowhere else to go. Hotel. Couldn't afford it for more than a night or two. With a snarl, I turned the key in the ignition and headed back. Dusk lay thick over our street. I half expected to see Rick's car there again. But the curb was empty. I walked inside, the door squeaking, and saw Helen on the couch, hugging the throw pillow like a life raft. The air felt stale, weighted with tension. Mike, she began, voice small. I slammed the door shut behind me. Don't. She stood, dropping the pillow. I just want to talk. I stared at her for a long moment, every muscle in my body taut. I felt my jaw clench painfully. Finally, I spoke in a low voice. Talk then. Tell me why you thought it was okay to do that. To us. She swallowed, tears pooling in her eyes. I made a mistake, a huge one. I've been so unhappy and Rick just... He said everything I wanted to hear. He offered me a life. A life you can't get with me. I finished, bitterness lacing my tone. Because I'm just a miner who comes home smelling like coal, right? Her lips quivered. That's not fair. You know I love you. She broke off, trembling. A surge of contempt roiled inside me. You don't do that to someone you love, Helen. She let out a shaky breath, tears sliding down her cheeks. I wanted to push her away, shout at her to keep her distance. Yet part of me wanted an explanation, some miracle that would make this betrayal vanish. But there was no miracle. Just the harsh truth. She'd chosen him. She'd let him into our house, onto our couch. I took a step toward the hallway. We can talk more tomorrow. I'm too angry to be rational right now. Helen wiped her face. Where are you going? I paused, my shoulders heaving. To our bedroom. To get some clothes and figure out what to do next. She stood frozen, arms limp at her sides. As I brushed past, I caught the faint scent of Rick's cologne on her shirt. It ignited every nerve in my body. I hurried into the bedroom, slammed the door, and sank onto the bed. My mind spun with a single resolve forming in the chaos. I wasn't going to let this humiliation slide. I had no idea what shape revenge might take, but one thing was clear. I refused to be the fool left holding the pieces of a broken marriage, while they lived out some perfect fantasy. I barely slept that night. I tossed and turned on the bed, ignoring Helen's timid knocks. By morning, my eyes felt gritty, and a pounding headache pulsed behind my temples. Every time I drifted off, I pictured them. Helen's body arching under Rick's touch, his smirk as he buttoned his shirt. A hot stab of fury jolted me awake each time. At sunrise, I left the house without speaking to her. I needed the air, the space to think. My pickup rattled along the narrow road leading away from town, toward a small creek where I used to fish. The morning chill cut through my thin jacket as I stepped onto the creek's bank, gravel crunching beneath my boots. The memory of simpler times floated in the air. Me, a cheap rod, a cooler of beer, not a care in the world except whether the fish would bite. But that was before I married Helen, before I took on a mortgage, before the job pinned me down like a rockslide. Leaning against a tree, I tried to steady my breathing. I could still hear her voice, that frantic apology. I'd spent years trying to hold our life together with my bare hands, and she'd thrown it away for a thrill. My phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't Helen. The foreman, probably wondering why I hadn't shown up on time. I glanced at the screen, considered ignoring it. But I needed the paycheck. As much as I wanted to drive away and never look back, I was chained to that damn mine by necessity. I exhaled, heading back to the truck. Yeah, I muttered into the phone. I'm coming. The day's shift passed like a fever dream, my mind too consumed by betrayal to focus. Later, after I clocked out, I found a coworker, Sam, waiting. He was a wiry man with a sympathetic look in his eyes. You all right, Mike? He asked, voice low, as we pulled off our hard hats. I studied him, evaluating whether to unload my personal disaster. Sam was trustworthy enough, but I hated pity. Still, the loneliness was suffocating. Found out Helen's cheating on me, I said, voice flat. His eyes widened. Dan. Sorry, man. Need a place to crash. I shook my head, half smiling at his kindness. Thanks, but I can handle it. The words sounded hollow, even to me. As we left the locker room, Sam hesitated. If you want me to pick up some of your shifts, let me know. I know you push yourself too hard sometimes. I managed to nod. Appreciate it. We parted ways, and I wandered into the fading daylight. My body felt wrecked, my spirit worse. But an idea had begun coiling in the back of my mind. If Helen wanted a better life so badly, maybe I'd give her a taste of how ugly that pursuit could get. That evening, I returned home, dreading the confrontation. Helen stood in the kitchen, wringing her hands. The house smelled like leftover spaghetti, stale and unappetizing. We locked eyes. The tension was thick enough to strangle. Mike, she began softly. I ended it with Rick. My stomach turned. You think that undoes the damage? She shook her head, tears threatening again. No, but it's a start. I told him I can't see him anymore. Good, I said, my tone cold. Because if I see him near you again, I'm not sure I'll be able to control myself. The dark timbre in my voice surprised even me. I never used to be a violent man. But now I understood how betrayal can flip a switch inside you. Helen stepped closer, arms trembling at her sides. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me? I studied her for a moment. Once, I'd have given my life for her. Now, I couldn't see past her betrayal. My voice came out rough. I don't know. She nodded, tears falling. I'll do anything. We can go to counseling. Or I can move out, if that's what you want. My jaw clenched. Just stay out of my way, I muttered, brushing past her to the bedroom. My mind churned with resentment and a desire for retribution. It wasn't enough that she'd ended it. She had to feel the weight of what she'd done. And Rick Coleman, he needed to be taught a lesson. A few days crawled by. I barely spoke to Helen. She tried cooking my favorite meals, cleaning the house, offering me gentle words. It only fanned the flames of my rage. Even though I saw the regret etched in her face, I couldn't let it go. At night, I lay awake, imagining all the ways to make them pay. That Saturday, I skipped the mine's overtime. Instead, I drove around town, searching for Rick. I found him in the parking lot outside a sleek new bar that catered to wealthier clientele. He was leaning against a silver luxury sedan, chatting on his phone. My blood ran hot. I parked across the lot, watching from behind my dusty windshield. He looked confident, oblivious to the damage he caused. I waited until he ended his call, then slid out of my truck, crossing the asphalt with a steady stride. Rick, I said, voice low. He glanced up, mild surprise flickering over his face. Then his expression shifted into wary arrogance. Michael, he replied, slipping his phone into his pocket. I was wondering when we'd have a little chat. Chat. My lip curled. I should break your jaw, you son of a bitch. He put up his hands. I get that you're angry. And I'm sorry about how things turned out. But I didn't force Helen. You know that, right? She came to me. My fists tightened, nails digging into my palms. You think that makes it better? You think it absolves you? He shrugged. I'm not looking for absolution. I was looking for a good time. She seemed open to it. Heat flared behind my eyes. You're scum. Rick's gaze hardened. Don't pretend you're some innocent victim. Helen was unhappy. You gave her space to explore other options. I stared at him, rage choking me. After a tense beat, I stepped closer. You have no idea what you've unleashed. He smirked. You're threatening me now. Damn right I am, I growled. Stay away from Helen. Stay away from my house. Or I swear, you'll regret it. He raised an eyebrow. I'd be careful if I were you. I have resources. People in my corner. Don't start a fight you can't finish. I almost lunged at him, but I caught a glimpse of two bystanders watching from the bar entrance. Instead, I hissed, "You'll see." With that, I turned on my heel and strode back to my truck, heart pounding. My mind whirled with the desire to hurt him, to burn his smug life to the ground. That night, I laid out a rough plan. I'd gather any dirt I could on Rick's business dealings. I knew some men in the mine had connections in the local government offices. Maybe I could find out if Rick's energy ventures had skeletons in the closet. A few well-placed calls, an anonymous tip. With a man like Rick, money was everything. If I could threaten his empire, maybe I could knock him down a peg. Meanwhile, I'd push Helen away emotionally, make her feel the cost of choosing a wealthier man's arms. I wouldn't be physically abusive. No, that wasn't me. But I'd starve her of affection, let her see how lonely her existence could become. And if she tried to make amends, I'd remind her of the bruise on her thigh, the stain on our marriage. Revenge coursed through my veins, a dark, exhilarating drug. This wasn't who I used to be, but I couldn't stop now. My pride demanded satisfaction. And so, with grim determination, I set the wheels in motion, preparing for the day I'd watch them both crumble. My chance to strike arrived sooner than expected. A local rumor circulated that Rick's new business expansions skirted environmental regulations. He had apparently paid off an inspector. Whispers in bars, scraps of overheard conversation at the diner, half-baked accusations. It was enough for me to piece together a lead. I spent my breaks from the mine making phone calls, forging alliances with a few local men who hated Rick's arrogance as much as I did. They fed me tidbits of information. A missed permit, a doctored report, a suspicious check. Helen sensed something brewing in me. She tiptoed around the house, her eyes rimmed with dark circles. I spoke to her only in cold monosyllables, or harsh reminders that she'd broken us. She tried to apologize again and again. I refused to engage. One evening, while I scrolled through property records on my phone, she approached quietly. "Mike, this has gone too far," she whispered, tears shining in her eyes. "You're scaring me." I glared at her, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. "Scaring you? I'm not the one who brought a stranger into our house." Her lips trembled. "I'm just saying. The way you look at me, the things you mutter in your sleep, you're not yourself." I stood, towering over her, letting the tension coil. "Who am I supposed to be, Helen? Your sweet husband who forgives and forgets?" My pulse thudded in my ears. "That man is gone." She pressed her trembling fingers to her mouth. I brushed past her, ignoring the stab of guilt in my gut. I'd always believed in working things out, but betrayal had warped my patience. The need to hurt them back overshadowed everything. The final puzzle piece arrived through a friend of a friend who worked at the local clerk's office. He slipped me a copy of questionable documentation for Rick's latest project, some expansions near the old river. The paperwork reeked of bribery. My contact even hinted that Rick might have blackmailed a city official to expedite the building permits. Armed with these files, I contacted a journalist from the neighboring county, a reporter known for her exposés on corporate corruption. I sent her the docs anonymously, along with a note: "Look into Rick Coleman's permits. Follow the money." Then I sat back and waited, letting my resentment simmer. 2 weeks later, a bombshell article broke online. Local energy manager under investigation for fraudulent permits. Rick's smug face was plastered across the front page of the news site. Accusations of bribery, environmental damage, hush money. I devoured every word with a savage grin. Within hours, social media lit up, and Rick's name became a scandal. But that was only half the revenge. I confronted Helen that evening after seeing her read the article on her phone, eyes wide in shock. "You see," I said, voice dangerously calm, "that's your dream, man. Hope it was worth it." She looked haunted, biting her lip. "I can't believe he was involved in all that." "Oh, believe it," I sneered. "You wanted excitement. You got it. Welcome to the consequences." Helen flinched as though I'd slapped her. "Mike, please, I'm trying to make things right between us." I stared at her, that old warmth flickering for a fraction of a second. Then I reminded myself of her betrayal. "There's no writing this, Helen. Not anymore." Just then, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I picked up, hearing Rick's furious voice on the other end. "You bastard," he spat. "You think you can smear me? You have no clue who you're messing with." My lips curled. "Go to hell." He snarled something about lawyers, lawsuits. I ended the call with a sense of grim satisfaction. Let him squirm. His business deals teetered on ruin, public trust evaporating by the hour. Later that night, I found Helen sobbing quietly in our bedroom. The raw pain in her cries tugged at something deep inside me, but I shook it off. I told myself she deserved the torment. She'd chosen Rick after all, and now she was trapped between guilt over hurting me and fear of the scandal swirling around her lover. But my vendetta demanded one more act. I had to end things decisively with Helen. Tear out the last shred of the love we once shared. The next day, I went to a lawyer in a neighboring town. He was a gruff old man named Hardy, rumored to be tough as nails in divorce proceedings. When I explained the infidelity, he nodded, handing me forms. "This might get messy," he said, "but I'll do what needs doing." I left his office with a pit in my stomach. My marriage was about to be legally dismantled, but the savage part of me relished the final blow. I decided I wouldn't give Helen any heads up. Let her be blindsided. Another wave of retribution. That evening, I came home late. Helen rushed to me. Concern etched on her face. "Where were you?" I was worried. The irony of her question nearly made me laugh. I let out a humorless chuckle. "I was handling things. It's time we ended this farce." Her eyes flicked across my face. "Mike, no. We can still." I cut her off, tossing the divorce paperwork onto the coffee table. "Sign. Or don't. Doesn't matter. I'm filing anyway." Her face crumpled as she scanned the documents. "You're divorcing me." A strange numbness settled over me. "You think I can stay married after what you did? After I saw that bruise on your leg, the way you looked at him." She sank onto the couch. "But I said I was sorry. I ended it. Too late," I said, voice like ice. My gaze bore into her. "I'm done being the fool." She fell silent, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. I watched her break in front of me, a twisted satisfaction mingling with deep sorrow. This was the woman I'd loved, who had once loved me enough to promise forever. But betrayal had turned us into strangers, locked in a war we couldn't escape. As I turned away, she choked out, "Don't you still love me? Even a little?" A flicker of agony flared in my chest. "Maybe I do," I admitted, voice low. "But you killed any chance we had to rebuild." Then, before she could say another word, I strode toward the bedroom. Tomorrow, I'd be leaving for good, with or without her signature. When dawn crept over the horizon, I was up, packing the last of my clothes into a scuffed duffel bag. Helen hovered in the doorway, eyes red from a sleepless night. The air felt stale, oppressive. My every motion seemed magnified in the hush of morning. The rustle of clothes, the zip of the duffel, the steady thump of my heartbeat. A dull ache pounded in my temples. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. There were messages I'd ignored. Rick leaving furious voicemails, local rumors swirling about his possible arrest, a coworker asking if I was quitting the mine. But I had no energy for any of it. My mind was set. Get out, finalize the divorce, start over somewhere else if I had to. Helen stepped closer, voice shaky. "Mike, please, just listen." She clutched a wad of tissues in her hand. "I never meant to destroy us. I was lost. I was stupid. I wish I could take it all back." For a split second, I pictured the early days of our relationship, her shy smile, the way she'd reach for my hand in a crowded room. The memory stabbed me with regret, but I forced it down, jaw tightening. "You can't take it back. Neither can I." I pushed past her, duffel in hand. The living room, once a place we watched TV in comfortable silence, now felt like a graveyard of broken trust. I paused by the coffee table, noticing the divorce papers. She'd signed them, her neat cursive scrawled next to a watery stain, probably a tear that splashed down while she did it. A pang of guilt tugged at me, but I steeled myself. This was the end. Helen sniffed, stepping behind me. "Where are you going?" I shrugged. "Maybe a motel. Maybe I'll crash at Sam's place until I can afford something else." I glanced around. "I'll figure it out." Her breath hitched. She reached out as though she wanted to touch my arm, then propped her hand. "You're leaving me with the house." I nodded, exhaling. "For now. I'll talk to the lawyer about splitting it, selling it, whatever we have to do. I'll come by for my truck if I need to." I realized how mechanical my words sounded. The once cherished life we built was reduced to property talk. She wiped her nose with the tissue, a hollow look in her eyes. "I know you won't believe me, but I do love you, Mike." Her voice broke on my name. My chest constricted. I wanted to lash out, to tell her love doesn't betray, but I couldn't muster the energy anymore. Instead, I simply said, "Goodbye, Helen." Then I stepped outside. The morning air tasted of damp leaves and regret. I tossed my duffel into the passenger seat and climbed into the truck, forcing myself not to look back at the house. The engine growled to life, and I drove off, the gravel crunching under the tires like the echo of our shattered vows. I headed straight to the lawyer's office, finalizing my instructions to file for divorce. Hardy gave me a curt nod, took the signed forms, and said he'd handle the rest. His final comment, "You made the right choice. Don't let her guilt trip you," clung to me as I walked out. The right choice. Maybe. It sure didn't feel like it. Later that day, I got a text from Sam. "Heard you quit. If you need anything, call me." I stared at the words. Quit. The foreman must have assumed I wasn't coming back. Maybe I should quit. The mine felt like a tomb now, a place that symbolized everything that went wrong in my marriage. My inability to earn more, to give Helen the life she wanted. But that paycheck was still my lifeline. I texted back, "I'll let you know, man." Mid-afternoon found me in the dingy motel on the edge of town, flipping through TV channels without registering a single image. My phone chimed again. Another unknown number. I answered, half expecting Rick's tirade, but it was the reporter. She thanked me for the documents and said Rick Coleman was facing an inquiry that could lead to criminal charges. The words gave me a flicker of grim satisfaction. My revenge was nearly complete. He'd lose his status, maybe some serious fines or jail time if the corruption was proven. By evening, though, the glow of triumph began to fade. Sitting on the squeaky motel bed, I realized I'd never feel whole again. Revenge had burned so hot, but now it left me hollow. Yes, Rick's empire was toppling. Helen was miserable. I destroyed everything around me in pursuit of payback, yet the hollow ache in my chest persisted. I'd lost more than a marriage. I'd lost the part of me that believed in kindness, trust, and second chances. The next morning, I decided to finalize the last piece of my plan, paying Rick a personal visit so I could see the ruin in his eyes. I drove to his fancy condo complex on the other side of town. A uniformed guard at the gate gave me a glare, but I talked my way in, feigning urgent business. When I rapped on Rick's door, I heard muffled cursing. He answered, wearing casual designer clothes that couldn't hide the fury etched on his face. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "What the hell do you want?" he snapped. I took a moment to soak in his disheveled appearance. Gone was the polished, confident posture. In its place, stress etched deep lines around his eyes. "I just wanted to see you. Make sure you're enjoying the consequences of messing with another man's wife." His jaw tightened. "You think you've won. You've no idea the damage you've done. Damage you deserved," I said, voice cold. "If I ever catch you near Helen again, I'll do worse." He let out a humorless bark of laughter. "She's all yours, man. I'm finished with that headache." A surge of anger threatened to overwhelm me, but I clenched my fists at my sides, refusing to react. Good. I turned to leave, but he called after me. "You'll regret poking a hornet's nest, Barrett." I paused in the doorway, forcing a smirk. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you." Then I walked away, a tangle of triumph and emptiness warring inside me. By the time I drove back to the motel, the last thread of rage had evaporated. What was left? My marriage was in ashes, my house abandoned, my job in limbo. In one explosive act of vengeance, I'd incinerated every piece of my old life. Now I stood at the threshold of something new. Freedom, maybe, or an endless void. The divorce went through quietly over the next few weeks, with minimal legal wrangling. Helen and I exchanged no words. I'd left everything: furniture, wedding photos, even the cheap gold watch she once gave me. I didn't want the reminders. Each day, the finality sank deeper. I was alone, but at least I wasn't living under the same roof as my betrayer. One late evening, I packed my truck with a few essentials and left West Virginia, heading west with no particular destination. The highway lights blurred, and I felt a profound mix of fear and strange relief. In the rearview mirror, I watched the silhouette of the small mining town fade into darkness. My life there ended the moment I saw Rick's silhouette in my living room. As the miles unspooled, I whispered a silent vow. I'd rebuild, maybe somewhere quiet, where the memories couldn't haunt me so viciously. But I'd never again let myself be blindsided by trust. Betrayal's sting lingered in every breath, every heartbeat, a cautionary tale etched into my bones. They say time heals all wounds, but I knew better. It only dulls them, scaring over the raw flesh. Perhaps in another decade, I'd look back and feel a distant pang instead of the piercing heartbreak. For now, I only knew one thing for sure. I'd exacted my revenge. I'd broken the life of the man who stole my wife, and I'd shattered the illusions of the wife who betrayed me. And in doing so, I'd also destroyed a part of myself. The road stretched ahead, an uncertain horizon. I pressed the gas pedal, letting the wind whip through the open window. No turning back now. The final page in that chapter was written. I could only hope the next lines of my story would be kinder. End.